What can we learn from the past that changes how we live in the present? Of all the questions Final Fantasy VIII asks, this might be the most relevant to our own experiences. A story told between two time periods, the past as Laguna saw it, and the present as Squall navigates it. Using flashbacks and in-game history wasn't exactly a new idea in the Final Fantasy series, having featured plenty of times before the 8th installment, but never before were the two so entwined. Final Fantasy as a series often looks at those that came before as a guide for what follows in its wake, though this isn't always entirely obvious. Though we're not always given the opportunity to look directly into the past by way of flashbacks, earlier titles use the supporting cast and rich world of NPCs to discuss current events and in-universe history right from the very first title. We hear over and over again about the prophecy following the Light Warriors of Final Fantasy I, see the aftermath of FF2's Emperor as he attempts world domination, learn firsthand why the world of FF3 is covered in darkness, and FF4 goes so far as to open with a flashback of main character Cecil's immediate regrets. None of these games dwell on the past forever. At their cores, each tells a story of triumphing over evil and looking to the future. Nowhere is this made more clear than Final Fantasy V, where the previous generation of Warriors of Light passed down the mantle to the heroes of the current day. This handing over of responsibility might even be self-referential, as series creator Hironobu Sakaguchi left the role of director after the 5th game, passing the torch to Yoshinori Kitase instead. Under Kitase's direction, the series began to focus heavily on storytelling, with the highlight placed on unique individuals and their relationships to each other and the world at large, contrasting with Sakaguchi's approach of prophecies and heroes chosen by crystals. The first title under new management, FF6, is the first in the series to feature a playable flashback. We take control of Terra's father, the Esper Maduin, as he navigates his feelings for a human outsider. Though we're unable to open the menu and there are no battles, we still guide his steps to see the world through his eyes, which makes the horror of what comes next even more impactful, as the rest of the cast cannot witness him lose everything the way we as players do. FF7 goes a step further with this design philosophy. The Nibelheim flashback is one of the most iconic story segments of the game and dictates so much of the story in the current day. The player controls a much younger Cloud, or is it Zack, as he grapples with the reality of being unable to prevent the destruction of his hometown or the madness of his friend. Some of Kitase's early story proposals can be found in the FF Ultimania Archive Volume 2. At one point it was conceptualized for the game to be set in two time periods, with events playing out concurrently. The idea was ultimately scrapped, but made its way into the drawing board for the next game. At multiple points throughout the story of FF8, we step away from the current objective to explore a period of time occupied by Laguna, complete with ongoing battles and experience gain. Thankfully, these stats carry over from the past to the present and vice versa. An awkward but passionate soldier in the Galberdian army, Laguna slips away from the military to settle down, well, kind of, in a quiet village with Rain, a local woman who saved his life, and Elone, an orphan of the ongoing Sorceress War. The nature of the war sees Elone kidnapped, and Laguna leaves to rescue her, eventually replacing the fearsome sorceress Adele as the president of Esthar, where he remains until the current day. The pursuit of duty over love means that Laguna never sees his family united again. Rain passes away in childbirth, leaving Elone devastated, and his new son grows up an orphan, never knowing his father. In the present day, Squall ultimately ends up in Balam Garden, a combat academy famed for producing mercenaries, who are being trained to defeat the sorceress, but no one knows about that yet. Shh. Awkward and taciturn on the outside, as players were able to see the full depth of his emotional side that he never really reveals to others. Like his father before him, Squall consistently chooses duty, even when his disdain for orders is obvious, until new ally Renoa is possessed by the main antagonist. Over the course of the game, Squall's view on the world is slowly influenced by the people he's surrounded with, and in the latter half of the story, he comes to terms with the burgeoning feelings of companionship and romantic interest. In the game's most glaringly obvious parallel, Squall ultimately chooses love over duty in the same place that Laguna once sealed the fate of his era's sorceress, but this isn't the only place we can draw comparisons. Outwardly nothing alike, internally both men are uncertain about the future. At multiple points we see Squall grapple with his place in the world, or resign himself to lines of thought that a mature audience understands are nothing more than self-fulfilling prophecies. Meanwhile Laguna, already a decade older than Squall during the flashbacks, isn't as unsure but still thinks about what could be, and has his moments of fear that could easily lead to self-sabotage. but these characters don't know each other until much later in the game. It's Alone that links them in an attempt to change the past, repeatedly sending Squall's consciousness back in time for him to witness the actions of a man he dislikes, inadvertently learning from him in the process. Alone is unable to change the past or her present, but through her, Squall is given a unique opportunity to see what has happened previously and choose to follow in his father's footsteps, or not. By the time we meet Laguna in the current day, he's still an S-Star with plenty on his mind. Rather than follow in his footsteps, Squall has already made up his mind not to dedicate himself solely to duty. He might be a child of fate, but by learning how not to behave, his character matures enough to be able to say decisively, "I know what I want and what I have to do. There's still a chance. I'm not going to look back. I'm taking Renoa with me." So what does FF8 show us we can learn from the past? Not to regret what has already happened. Laguna would not be the person he is without having met Rain in Alone. And not to think you can't change your mind. Squall could easily have remained a mercenary for the rest of his life. Both men show us the importance of not getting in your own way in life, and that the world has so much to offer when you keep an open mind and remember to expand your horizontals. So that was our video discussing what FF8 teaches us about the past. Please like, subscribe and share the video around. If you'd like to hear more Final Fantasy discussion, we also have a podcast linked in the description below. Thanks for watching and see you next time.